Hi, and welcome to this Fane online event. My name's David Farrier. I'm a journalist and documentary maker, currently based in LA. But when I lived in New Zealand, I met today's guest when I was interviewing him for a local news broadcast. Serj Tankian is well known as the frontman of the Grammy award-winning band System of a Down, a sentence he's probably kind of sick of hearing right now. He's also a solo artist, a composer, poet, filmmaker, activist, and now he's an author with a book called Down with the System. Serj, welcome.
Thank you. You forgot friend. It's the most important
And
part.
friend, yes.
Yeah, forget about the rest. And this
I'm
is
trying not to be biased.
Fane. Fane. I don't want to live forever.
It's
Yeah,
really
I don't
nice
even
to
know.
see you.
Can I ask you a question? What the fuck does Fane mean?
Look, I don't know. It's a mystery. It's this company that hosts these events. It's why we're here. It's why people get to listen to us, mainly you talk. And for that,
Yeah,
I say good on them.
good on them.
Serge,
Uh,
I have just powered through this book and I'm a slow reader, but it's a quick
Thank you,
page
bud.
turner. Congratulations on that. Uh,
Thank you so much.
It's sort of subtitled a memoir and then in brackets of sorts, which I really like. I was wondering if you could expand on that of sorts, because I think you have done a really unique thing with this book.
Yeah, my first of all, thank you for doing this with me, David. David, for all those who may not know him, is an incredible documentary filmmaker, a fantastic journalist, uh, an awesome humorist, a podcaster, and one of my good old friends. And he's not old, I'm old, but one of my old, friends. But anyway, so to answer your question, of sorts. That reminds me of licorice sorts in New Zealand, actually. You know,
Oh,
those nice bags. You love
the
those.
best candy. Yeah, we're big fans of licorice in New Zealand and all sorts layers of licorice combined with this sort of sweet, these other sweet layers layered up. Oh, I can do a bag in about under a minute, Serge.
That's what this book is. It's made of all sorts. Um, no, but originally, my intention wasn't to write a memoir. My intention was to actually write about the intersection of justice and spirituality. And I had these ideas, these philosophical ideas, and but they did have to do with lessons learned in my life. So when I was presented with the opportunity to do a memoir, I soon came to the realization that I'm going to try to do both in one book. So of sorts comes from that.
Yeah, and I think for me, and we'll get into some of the stuff in the book soon without I don't want to spoil the book because it's such a good page turner, but it sort of strikes me as a book about creation, whether it's kind of the act of creating these different things you have made, uh, and I guess also, yeah, just the act of creating this book. Like there's so much creation in this thing.
Yeah, you know me, David. I wake up every morning and I'm excited about something creative that I want to do, whether it's music, which is mostly music, but it could be art, it could be writing, it could be an event, it could be anything really. Just something I haven't done before, something to explore creatively, and something to bring into the world that wasn't there before. So, yes, there is that. And I hope there's enough of that creative excitement. Because when I read other people's books or memoirs or listen to audiobooks, I love being inspired by someone's story, not just their historical story and biography, but also their creativity, their zeal for what they do. It inspires me as an artist. So yeah.
And I think you do this really incredible thing where I mean, I felt like I not only learned about you and the history of your own personal work, but just the history of people as well and where you come from. And that bleeds into everything that you've done and certainly into System of a Down and all your solo work and art and everything. You kind of open uh, talking about your grandfather and his stories, and you talk about him so beautifully. I just wondered why you chose to start with this man who sounded like a wonderful storyteller, and I feel like kind of infused you with storytelling as well.
we were lucky enough that my grandfather lived to a ripe age in his 90s after having, endured and survived the Armenian genocide. Been through a number of orphanages, lost his eyesight. He had this incredible survival story. We knew more about him than our other grandparents because he lived longer, so he became the focus in that way of the family story. But also, my grandfather was this enigmatic, kind of really interesting person. He was an activist at heart, and he was very involved in the community. And it kind of like spearheaded my activism. He came, I was inspired by him as an activist, and it made, it helped kind of cement my beliefs for justice.
Yeah, which is something that's bled through all of your work. And the book also, as well as opening on your grandfather, opens on this really sort of insane moment with System of a Down, where you're hitting #1 as one of America's biggest tragedies happens, which was 9/11. Your album peaked during that week, and you sort of thrust us into what that was like in your headspace as a musician experiencing this amazing success as a young man and a young band, whilst reckoning with this really intense moment in America and world politics. That must have felt like such a insane time. And I know America feels again particularly unhinged right now, but I'm wondering if you could just take us back to that time in the band and in your life.
Yeah, I mean, people always, when people always ask me, how did you feel when Toxicity came out, which is our biggest record, A System of a Down, it's our #1 record. And, they expect to hear stories of, wow, we hit #1. I heard myself on the radio. It was so incredible. It was more like, fuck, I was so stressed out. I didn't know what to do with myself because everything was, I mean, people may not know, but on the week of 9/11, the Billboard #1 record in the United States was a band called System of a Down. And the top single had the words, "Trust in my self-righteous suicide. I cry when angels deserve to die." It freaked the fuck out of everyone, including us. Not to mention that the essay that I wrote called Understanding Oil, which it was, writing small kind of essays was something I would do and post on the band's website every so often. It was, geopolitics is kind of my, thing. Since music became my career, geopolitics became my hobby in a way. And I love researching things and learning. I like to know where things come from, who benefits from what events, So when that happened, I wrote that piece. And if you read it now, and it is read now, it's all over, not just the internet, but they've even taught it at universities as activist essays and stuff. And it's basically talks about a multilateral approach to finding those who were guilty for 9/11 and bringing them to justice, and balancing our foreign policy so that we're not basically in the pockets of dictators in the Middle East and keeping their own populations and democracy out of touch. That is I mean, it doesn't sound very threatening, but 9/11 was such a strange time. There was a lot of fear, a lot of anger, a lot of reactionism, and pseudo-patriotism. There was actual patriotism, but there was also pseudo-patriotism. And, it was the first time that in a democracy like the United States, I felt like it's not easy to speak, and that is scary, and we see traces of that happening now, as you mentioned, in certain ways, with other events and wars and everything else going on.
So it brings me back to something else that I really, I found it really fulfilling reading it in the book. And it's a quote I wrote down, actually. I scribbled it down. You said that mixing music and politics can often feel like walking on a tightrope, and how for years, you'd been disparaged for your activism with this idea of like people yelling at you, just shut up and sing. And you also wrote, that sort of criticism is disingenuous people have no problems combining music with politics as long as they agree with the politics. You're someone that sort of never compromised in what you do. I'm just curious, we're sitting here in 2024, how you feel about that now, because it's been under and continues to be under all of your work. And I wonder if you ever get sick of that shut up and sing line that you talk about in the book.
Yeah, I mean, it's been there the whole career, right?
Yeah.
And it still happens, but I pay less attention to online social media responses at this point. But it's always going to be there when someone disagrees. It's kind of like, if you're a plumber, would you say shut up and just plumb? I mean, or you know what I mean? Like, why is it that musicians can't express their opinions? People that have opposing views are pissed off that certain artists at least, have an audience where they may not, and that's really the core of it. And you have to, early on, as a musician, I have to decide whether I want to be an entertainer or an artist, because an artist can entertain, right? But an entertainer will try to do their best to just keep their audience, and grow that audience. In my case, that's not my priority. I've lost a lot of fans over my words, my activism, my posts, all of that, and I am not just okay with that, but I'm in a way proud of that, because if if I if I can't be an artist and speak the truth, my truth, whatever you want to call it, and you're welcome to disagree, and I have no problem with that, obviously. But if I can't do that, then I'm not supposed to do this. I'm not Tom Jones. Like, I'm not an entertainer, No disrespect to Tom Jones. He's great.
Yeah, I think you had another line about how being an artist should never be a popularity contest. And I think that's what's super interesting about your career, is you've got this like giant behemoth of system, which you've recently come back from Vegas where you played to these giant crowds, and I saw photos of you guys huddling with Rick Rubin there, and it looked like such a beautiful, amazing time. And then you go off and just do whatever the hell you want, and there's something really magical about that.
It is. I think it's a gift to be able to wake up. I mean, when people ask, they're like, they use the word success. I always think of success. I mean, sure, there's financial success, there's commercial success. You can define it any which way you like. The way I define it is, when I wake up in the morning, do I have the right to do whatever it is that I want to do with my day and be able to live off it? Then I'm successful at whatever capacity that is, So I consider that to be a success. And to be able to, like you said, we played Sick New World Festival, our second year, a festival that we helped kind of bring forth and brand. To be able to do that in front of 60,000 screaming fans that were just having a blast. I mean, we had, Danny Elfman and Slipknot and Perfect Circle, Primus. We have so many amazing bands this year and last year as well. But then come back and be able to work on my book, or work on a score, or paint and do all the things I love to do. It's the diversity that's fun in art. It's the diversity that kind of educates the other, form of art. Doing the same thing again and again is not art. Again, it goes back to entertainment. It's repetition is useful in meditation, but not in art. It's death in art.
I think, I was wondering what it was like writing this book when you're transporting the reader and yourself back to, you arriving in Los Angeles and figuring out who you were. Love that you started kind of in IT as your first serious job, working in software. And, that was just, I just find it so incredible thinking of you in that world. Do you look back at that early you and recognize yourself, or is that just this completely different human? Because I feel like writing this book must have kind of been like time travel for you, going back and revisiting those times, because you have to paint the portrait for the reader. And so that takes you back there in a really visceral way as well.
Cheapest therapy on the planet. I got paid to do my own therapy, and look back upon my history and make the connections and learn the lessons and learn more about my family history, my people's history. It became a really cool rabbit hole that I really wanted to get into that you never have time to get into. Looking at old photos. So yeah, I think, you know, it's been a gift to be able to do this. And I'm just so pleased that people are liking it so far, and that hopefully there's something that will, you know, inspire someone else to do something. You know, one message that I think is in there is I was at the far edges about who I shouldn't be to realize who I am. And that's not uncommon. I thought it was uncommon at the time, but it's not so uncommon. Kids don't know when they go to university. Most kids don't know what they want to do in life. And if they do, they might change that anyway, you know? And that's how I was. I studied marketing and business. I got a business degree from Cal State Northridge, and then started working in the jewelry industry with my uncle for years, who I had worked for over the summers as a kid. I worked in the shoe industry. I owned my own software company. And ultimately, you know, when the realization, the epiphany occurred that music is my, you know, the only way that I'm going to be happy, my vision, that's when everything shifted. And it was at a later age for me.
Yeah, and I also, you know, it wasn't like you suddenly just arrived at System. You sort of walk us through these other early bands you were in, one of whom tried to kick you out without you knowing at one point because they didn't like your singing, which I find amazing. Those early Scrappy days, were they, you know, you talk about this, but what was the level of like excitement versus sheer terror at performing to these increasingly sort of larger crowds and figuring out who you were, whilst some of your bandmates were also like, we don't know if we want this guy in the band. You know, those were chaotic times.
The first band, well, the first band I ever played in, I played keyboards in, and it was a group of Armenian American artists and some just American, you know, artists together.
Is that
We
Forever
were
Young?
playing kind of like this. That was Forever Young. Yeah,
Yeah.
good man. And then so and that was the first time I ever wrote a full song to be sung by our singer, and then co-wrote a song that I sang with some of these members. And so it was the first time I had a recording of a song that I had written and performed. Um, and then Darren and I started Soil, and it was a really crazy kind of progressive metal kind of band. But some of the melodies and vibes that System was based on were cooked in that band. And I was mostly screaming, yelling, a little singing, but trying to find my voice. Um, and you know, and we only had one show, you know. And after that show, our drummer decided to move back to Hawaii, and we started System of a Down, Darren and I, and we brought in Shovel from the onset, and yeah, so that was the kind of chronology of band events.
Yeah, this band that ended up being, you know, like family to you, and like family, full of, I mean, there's so much hecticness in this book about the dynamics between all
You
of
did
you.
it
And as
too.
I was,
Predecessor, hecticness. Predecessor, hecticness.
and it's yeah, it's fascinating to read. And all I could think when I was reading these stories is when you're writing about something and it's about you, but it's also about these people that you still work with, and you're writing about the good times and the bad times. Did you
Yeah.
ever sort of text them and go, "Hey, can I include this story?" when things like weren't so, or you know, what was that dynamic like about writing these really personal things about? It's not like, you know, you're in this band and you're writing these personal stories. What was that like? And did you sort of factor them in?
Of course, I factored them in,
Yeah.
and it is extremely tricky because you don't want to offend your friends, but as someone who's always been a truth sayer, you also want to be honest but compassionate. You know, in the early days, that wouldn't be the road I would take. You know, but for me, it was like realizing everything. You know, the good, bad, and the ugly, and talking about all of them in a loving way, and that's what I tried to get across. I tried it so that, you know, if I'm talking about something that I thought was unfair within the band, I would also talk about something that I thought was beautiful about that person or that situation or that event or whatever it was. And because that was there too, you know, and it wouldn't be fair not to mention. So but no, I didn't text anyone and go, hey, is it okay if I tell a story that you may not like when you read this? Given that they all have the books. I mean, we've serviced the books a while back. And so everyone has everyone has the book, but I didn't feel like it would be right to take permission to tell stories that were part of my life, because I didn't reveal anything, number one, that wasn't too publicly known, and I didn't reveal anything that should be a story that the person themselves should tell, that is their story. So I felt comfortable with, you know, doing so in that way.
Yeah, I did. I really liked it. I mean, I felt like I was there with you guys as you were forming and as you were figuring out who you were and as you were writing. And as someone who isn't in a band but loves music, I loved sort of learning about how that looked like, because it's not straightforward. It's like being part of the most chaotic family you could imagine, and you love each other, but you've also got to like figure out how you all creatively have a say and exist. And learning
Yeah,
about that was really, really fascinating.
cool. Good to know.
I'm curious, you know, I sort of met you when you're just working for the first time on your solo kind of work, like Elect the Dead in Auckland, New Zealand. You ended up doing this beautiful performance with an orchestra. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit through what it was like to go off and do this thing that was 100% you and throwing yourself into that world, what that was like.
I remember when we first met, we were outside the rehearsal space that the Auckland Philharmonia Orchestra
You have
was
a good
using.
memory.
Yeah, it was kind of like a park kind of area. There was a bench. You and I just picked a bench away from everyone else. We sat down and we had this beautiful chat, and you know, since then became friends. And that was a special moment for me, David, because that was the first time I had ever worked with orchestra. And since then, I've worked with at least 24 orchestras around the world, performed, done a symphony, done, you know, piano, modern piano concerto, and did invocations last year. You know, so orchestra became one of my tool sets, which I love performing with. You know, like the being on stage with an orchestra. I love performing with system, and I love performing with my backup band. But being with acoustic instruments on a stage with 70, 80 people is just a completely different feeling. It's a, you know, anyway, but you know, we have a few mutual friends that were involved. Jules Clemens, who was working at the time with the Auckland Philharmonia Orchestra, and Boranga, who kind of was the interlocutor, our artist friend. And they were kind enough to connect us. And, you know, when I remember we were in Seattle with the FCC on tour at the time, my backup band, doing Elect the Dead, the rock record. And the idea of performing these songs with an orchestra was something I couldn't walk away from. I just found it to be so exhilarating, you know? And so we started that process, and I got to meet one of my really good friends, John Psathis, an amazing composer, Kiwi composer. And so, you know, it became, and that also became like the road with which I was able to get into composing for film and TV. So, you know, my life changed by just that one day, you know, of working with them and you know, starting that road. And you were there.
Yeah, I feel
Which is
like,
incredible.
yeah, clearly I take all the credit for that. I feel like you're
I
really
will give you
good.
another, I'm going to cut you off, but I'm going to give you another credit. When I was working on Orca, my symphony, at the time, I didn't know I was writing a symphony. It was by accident, as we laugh about. And we were in Pia at our place. And I remember we were hanging out. I was playing you songs from my second solo record, Imperfect Harmonies. And then there were these long diatribes of orchestral stuff. And I remember going, I don't know what to do with these tracks because they're long and I can't see myself singing on them and stuff. And you looked at me and you go, bro, this is your symphony. Like literally, you said that. And that was the first time I actually thought of, whoa,
Uh,
I literally Googled symphony like an idiot, right? And how many of these fuckers do I need for it to be a symphony, you know? And it was mind blowing, but that was you as well. Anyway, please.
well, it was neat. It was neat sitting there and just hearing this. And I think when something's in front of you that's so clear, just sometimes you don't see it, right? And you need some idiot to come along and kind of go, hey, what about, yeah, thinking about it in this way? And as you say,
Not
I
idiot,
think
but
you're so
yeah.
good at walking through these different doors that present themselves. I mean, I think there'd be a world of people out there that think, hey, I'm in this Grammy award-winning band. Hundreds of thousands of people love us all around the world. This is my life now. You were always like looking and pushing for other things. And I think, as you said, that sort of took you into this entire scoring world. And something I found a fact in the book that I never knew is that sort of in the background of all of this, when you were getting into this world, you had been approached to score Passion of the Christ, which is a film that I, for a variety of reasons, it's such a, like or hate many aspects to it. It's a incredibly visceral piece of work. And you're
Hmm.
sort of approached for that in the background, but never heard about it until after, which I found so, I don't even know what my question is. It was just a very, I love that when you're in this world of these different things, occasionally these things kind of pass you by, and then years later you end up scoring films anyway, just organically.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that the Passion of the Christ story was interesting because um, I'm not sure that I was approached to score the whole thing. I think I was approached for additional music because of my background, uh, because of my ethnic background. But at the time, uh, my team somehow pivoted away from it because I was led to believe that there was it didn't want to compete with whatever was happening with system. But I didn't know that until I had a wonderful music supervisor in my studio talking to them about scoring films, and they said, well, I'm confused. If you wanted to score films, why didn't you respond when we contact you about Mel's film? And I'm like, what? It was like one of those moments like, what the, so those things. And the reason I wrote the story is that I wanted people to know that these are very common in the music industry. The music industry is riddled with conflicts of interest. And, because of that, there are many things that happen that are dishonest and not correct. I'm not saying this is necessarily fully one of them, but those things have happened to me. The Muse story, that's in there too.
Yeah.
For example, wonderful band that I love. But these things happen often in the industry, and you would think that they wouldn't happen to artists that are breaking, that whose team and everyone around them would be like, yeah, let's open doors, let's do this, let's do that. It's not necessarily the same. It's a very, very unique conflict of interest industry that needs to be kind of dealt with.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm obviously you did end up scoring. You score a lot of work. I was just wondering if you could talk creatively through what the differences of those worlds are. The satisfaction of going on stage versus sitting down and getting into the world of a video game or a film or a series.
Yeah, I mean, writing a song for a 4-piece or 5-piece to play, whether it's System of a Down or my solo stuff, is a totally different process in the sense that you don't have any limitations. You have to kind of create your own limitations. You have to say, okay, or the muse comes to you and you write a song, and next thing you know, you have a set of similar sounding songs, at least instrumentally, and you're like, wait a minute, I think I have an EP here, or wait a minute, I think I have an album. Thematically, whatever is on your mind at the time gets infused in lyrically and all of that. And that becomes the song world. Then you improve it, you work on it, you re-record it, you mix it, you master it, etc. You play, you perform it, and that's the performance aspect of it. When it comes to scoring, it's different because your limitations are predicated by your source, video or whatever you're following, right? Be it a film or a series or whatever. And the process is also different, even within a film versus series. For example, a lot of the Netflix series that I've been composing, docu-series, we are basically creating musical archives and tones of the series and then letting the editors plug those cues in and then sending it back to us for correction, addition, rescore, that kind of stuff. Because the timelines, the deadlines are so tight that when you finally get a final cut, you have like 3 days. You can't
Yeah.
score an hour in 3 days. I mean, you can, but it's not going to be pretty.
Not healthy. It's not going to be good.
Not healthy. No, no, no. So, because of that, the process is a long process of back and forth and using music almost, creating music almost like a suite. And there's something nice about that because you're not writing to pictures, so you're free. You're just writing. You read. You don't even look at video generally with series. You to start with, you basically read the synopsis, you read the outline, you have a chat with the producer, the director, etc., and off you go. You create a tone, and then you do a few cues. You send it to them. Do you like this tone? Am I on the right page? If so, then you complete that suite and you start that as an archive for them to use. With films, it's different because it's more linear. And even if you don't start with a final cut, you start somewhere and you're able to develop themes, character themes, event themes that can repeat, and kind of you can flesh them out in different areas. You start more minimal generally, and as you go along, they become more and more complex. And that is a beautiful process because it's like finding those little seeds that belong to each of the characters tone wise, and then watching them grow and making something grand out of them. And it's almost like there's a film I'm working on right now where the director is a unique savant, where he kind of cuts as he shoots. So he's cut 2/3 of the film, and he's left room, like literal room, in places that he knows he's gonna bring in new cuts and edits. And so I've scored the 2/3 of the film, and because all the themes are there, once we have that last half hour or whatever, it's actually going to be pretty easy to just go, okay, so here's that character back, here's his theme, but let's play it differently. Let's use different instruments, or there's no more thinking about what you're doing. It's all because it's linear. It's very interesting. And what I love about scoring also is I've never created a soundtrack that sounds like another soundtrack that I've done. They're each completely different, instrumentally and tone-wise, vibe-wise. And for me as an artist, that was my dream come true when I first started doing music. I didn't think I'd be touring for 2 years and doing, press and promo and videos for 6 months. I thought I'd be in the studio creating something new every day.
Yeah, there must be something so beautiful about the collaborative aspect of working on a series as well, or a film. I know you and Joe Berlinger, who's a director I love. You've worked with him a lot. It's obviously, he's a guy that directed, Paradise Lost and these amazing films. I feel it must be so nice getting to meet and work with these other incredible creatives that are not in music, but in these other really interesting creative areas, right?
Absolutely. You learn so much. Joe's an amazing director, as you said. And we recently had his Paradise Lost. I want to say it was the 20th or 30th anniversary of the film. And I was proud to moderate his Q&A after the screening. And, I've learned so much working with him and working with his films. They're all about justice. They're all about finding the truth, something that you also have a penchant for, and I do, and he does. So beyond the forms of what we're working on, it's the character of the person that you're working with that's very interesting. And Joe's actually quite hands off with music. He's not very stipulative in terms of this is how it's got to be. He's very open. So when we start a project, I'll just send him some musical ideas, and he'll either respond or not, but let me kind of do my own thing. And that is huge in terms of the trust that you would have in a composer. With other directors, they're a bit more hands-on, which I also appreciate, because when they know what they want, it makes my job easier, right? Because you sit down with someone and you go, okay, here's how I see the tone, how do you see it? And if they have input, whether it's really early on as a tone of a project, or later on in terms of specific cues, what's working, what's not working, why it's not working. And most directors I've noticed don't have a musical language, which is fair enough.
They're
not musicians.
But no, you've got to learn how to communicate. They need to learn how to communicate with you, and you need to be able to learn how to communicate with them, so you don't drive each other insane.
Yeah. And that's when an editor becomes valuable, because some, directors are very close with editors. They're editors. They're cutting in a small room, usually together, and usually for many, many projects, not even just one. And you know, and a director might say something like, oh, I don't know, it's not working, it's making my ears, it's too loud, like whatever. And then you'll hit up the editor and be like, hey, dude, is it the piano bothering him or is it the thing? It's the piano. I'm like, okay, we're losing the piano. Like it says, it could be as simple as that, rather than because if you listen to the, you know, comment, you might think, oh, it's a rescore, you know, for sure. And it might be, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a simple, small thing. So yeah, language is important.
Funny, as you've been talking, I've been looking at those records behind you, which all sort of, you know, shifted the course of your life in various ways. And I was listening to some of them as I was driving around. I was playing them in my car like quite loudly. And God, it's good music. And it's also so deeply weird. Like it's so, I'm listening to this going,
Yeah.
this is incredible that this managed to, it's so big and it's connected with so many people because it's just so weird. And there's a bit in the book where you talk about writing the lyrics for these albums and a lot of your work, and it's just, you know, scribbles in a notepad that you then just try and like cram into these song structures, and sometimes they clash in really interesting ways. I guess my point is, do you sort of, you know, all that you sing these songs again and again and you see the fans responding, do you clock how weird they are and how unusual it is
Oh
that
yeah.
they are so big?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, it's in the book that I mentioned that a year before we were all over the radio, K-Rock being in Los Angeles being the biggest station that was playing us, that was also kind of like a leader in that genre of music nationwide. The program director for K-Rock, Kevin Weatherly, had told, I remember, Rick Rubin that, I mean, I think they're really interesting, but I don't see how we can ever play this on the radio, ever play this on the radio, right? And a year later, we were the number one band on that station and in the country. So it's kind of, it's beyond me as well. I always laugh at it that these really ridiculous kind of heavy metal guys that are playing this clash of these weird rhythms and music, almost making fun of music itself and the industry. And there's all of this, you know, kind of not taking things seriously. That's in there that could actually be commercially popular on radio. Like we couldn't believe it. So it still amazes me, to be honest. That said, you know, our songs are, they're dressed up in complexities, but what they really are inside is very simple pop songs. Um, yeah, you know, so you might hear like a quick double time or something like that, but most of them are intro, verse, chorus, middle eight breakdown, double chorus, outro or no outro. Now, that is not always the case. Something like X, or we have 36-second songs and punk rock kind of shit that we do as well. So that throws people off, but most of the songs are well-crafted songs. And I got to say that Darren, being the primary kind of music instrumental songwriter of the band's majority of the band's songs, he has like a really great understanding of songwriting. And I've learned from him in that way. You know, it's made me a better songwriter musically. You know, when we first started, I did all the lyrics, he did all the music. We had like tasks, you know, split up. And as time went on, he started writing more lyrics. I started writing more music. So, and that was good and bad, because it was good because now you had really like, you know, two artists really developing strongly within the same group. But it was bad because you can only put so many songs on one record. You know, you can only do so. So that became kind of an issue. And the book talks about that in detail, of course. I won't get into that. But I find that to be very interesting.
Yeah, and you're right. They are pop songs. They're catchy as hell, and yeah, they don't get out of, they're all earworms that work their way in. And that's the other thing that I find so interesting. They're earworms, and we don't need to get too incredibly heavy here, but why not? You know, you're also infusing it with a lot of really intense political messages. I mean, a whole part of your mission has been, you know, raising awareness of the Armenian genocide and the fact that, yes, it did happen. It's a concept that a lot of people find it hard to wrap their heads around for a bunch of political reasons. But, you know, talk about conflict. You've got these ridiculous lyrics also mixed in with some of the most you couldn't be singing or talking about something more important to you and to the world and to the way we look at history. So that's another thing I find so fascinating about you guys. And I'm wondering, as you look back at your activism, as the ups and downs of all that, how do you feel about that now? Do you feel like you have pushed through? How many wins do you feel you've made over the frustration of just having to keep yelling this at people?
Every day when I post on Twitter today, like every day,
Yeah.
I post something about sanctioning Azerbaijan for the war crimes that they've done between 2020 and 2024 against the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. That's a small genocide that nobody knows about, nobody's talking about, nobody's having campus protests about. And it happened 2 weeks before Hamas attacked Israeli citizens. So it's not even like 100 years ago. We're talking about this year.
No.
So yeah, so it's really mind blowing to me that we are so disconnected at an age where we're so connected information wise, that we are so detached from our, compassion to people. And it also blows my mind that we're not progressing as humanity. It feels like we're regressing. We're in a constant state of war, injustice, and genocide as we speak right now, with the most modern technological weapons. And it's fucking mind-blowing to me. So yes, I think the lessons of the Armenian genocide from 1915 have not been learned. The lessons from the Holocaust, even with the Nuremberg trials, have not been learned. And it's still happening today. And I think as far as wins, I could easily say that the band has definitely been one of the major accomplishments of the band outside of music itself is the awareness that we've helped spread along with a bunch of great nonprofit organizations about the Armenian genocide. And for us, that's not a political issue because all our families have, survivors from the genocide. All our grandparents are survivors of the genocide. So for us, it's been personal from day one. And it's a shame that the UK, Australia, and New Zealand haven't, until now, formally recognized the Armenian genocide. The United States formally recognized in 2019 with both houses of Congress and President Biden voting for official recognition of the genocide. And, I'm saying UK, Australia, New Zealand because this Fane event is UK, Australia, and New Zealand. So I want people to hear that. And I think it's important for people to be aware of it, that, it's a simple fact that Hitler in 1939, as he was advising his generals to go into Poland and do unruly massacres, basically said, who now remembers the Armenians? He was basically saying we can easily act with impunity because people don't care about history. But people do care about history. I don't know if we're just detached, we're just too busy, whatever the hell, but it's very important. Very important.
Yeah, we're bad at learning. And I think sometimes you need to continually just yell at people, right? Because if you're not doing that, what's the point? And I think, there's this really majestic bit in the book where you're performing in Armenia for the first time. And it's such a joyous sort of moment to be, you go into detail about how difficult it was to get there and the number of roadblocks that you found out after the fact. It's kind of fascinating. But just quickly, if you could transport us back to that gig, because just reading it, I would have loved to have been in that crowd,
Yeah, that was our most magical show. If I was to point to one show that we've ever played over 30 years, that was our most. It was climbing the mountain. After that, it was just whatever happens is gravy. As a band, it felt like I don't know what the actual English word is, but it felt like we were designed to be there on that day. Like our whole 30 years of being a band was almost designed for us to be there on that day. And and we all felt it before the show. There was this special aura. I had this unbelievable calmness. And on stage, I was a little lost because I started thinking about my grandparents, and I almost felt like I felt their presence. I started like shaking almost. Um, and and I started spewing truths, that are there, speaking against injustice, whether it's the Obama administration's, not recognizing the genocide, or at the time the Armenian government's corruption and their ills and wills, So um, it was a special moment that I wish everyone was in that crowd. Luckily, it's on, it's recorded really well, and it's on YouTube, I think. And we made sure that we did a partnership with Rolling Stone at the time, and did a live stream where millions of people were able to watch, and that was amazing. But yeah, the road to getting there was not easy. There were a lot of, I'll leave the pitfalls to the book. You've read them, but but yeah, it's never easy. And we go back to the tightrope of being an artist and activist, even with your own culture and people or whatever, because if you're an activist, you don't just criticize your would-be national enemies. You criticize your own because you care, and if you don't, then you're not an activist, and that's okay,
As we start to wrap things up, I just wanted to think a little bit about the people that have listened to you and watched your work and listened to your scores. And obviously you're out there in the world meeting these fans who love what you do in various ways. I'm wondering what the types of people you are that you meet. I'm thinking of you in Vegas looking out at an audience at Sick New World. I imagine there's a variety of people there who different people probably come up to you at the mall and annoy you while you're just trying to do your shopping. Like, what are the kind of people that you see bouncing out? Because, that's this relationship that you've had this entire time as well,
Yeah. I'm really happy to say that it's all kinds, back to all sorts.
Yeah.
You know,
Licorice all sorts.
different ages, different cultures, different countries, and people come up with different things. And mostly people just say, hey, I really love your music. Sometimes you hear these incredible moving stories of how it's changed their lives, helped them kind of overcome an emotional impediment or something really powerful. And that's really moving. Like when someone tells you that, you're just like, whatever you're doing, you're stunned, and you're so grateful. And I'm always really touched because, you know, because I don't really think about it. I walk somewhere and someone will be like, "Hey, system," or they'll say, "Serj," or "Aren't you?" Like I get all those. "Aren't you?" Yeah, yeah. Yesterday I'm on the phone in my car, windows up, talking, and some guy pulls up and he's like this, doing that, and I'm like, I roll my window down and he goes, "Aren't you?" I'm like, "I am," and he's like, "Good music." I'm like, "Sweet, thanks, bro." And we just rolled up and it was that, "Aren't you?" "I am." Like it's the best. I mean, I'm grateful. I'm grateful. The only times I'm not grateful is when I'm with family and people might be intrusive and take pictures or do things that they're not supposed to do, and that's just not cool. But otherwise, totally amazing. I mean, such an easy. I never thought I would be that guy because I actually grew up a very shy person. I would never go up to people and talk to them. I'm like the antithesis of what the fuck I'm supposed to be as a lead singer of a band of this caliber, or whatever you want to call it. But it just happened.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are surprised probably when they first hear you speak because you're so gentle and thoughtful and not the stereotype of what people might think. I remember a time when we were walking together, we're at the Big Day Out, which is this festival, the Sick New World in New Zealand back in the day, and we sort of walked out into the crowd one time, and it was interesting for me because I was kind of like walking behind you, and you could just see people as they spotted you, and it was initially sort of interesting, and then eventually almost like a swarm appears, and you've got to start moving out of the line of that. But yeah, it's interesting the position you're in where you are getting on with your life and you've made this impact in the world, and suddenly people clock it, and how humans react, some with shock, some not knowing what to do, some just wanting to say hello, some wanting to desperately try and adjust their phone to get the right selfie. It's an interesting world you've created for yourself, you know?
The best one of the best ones that I remember was actually in New Zealand. It was in where's that place that something with the D? You
Dunedin?
take the ferry. No, you take the ferry from
Waiheke.
CBD and no, not Waiheke, something with a D, not Devon.
Devonport, over on the other side of the shore?
Devonport. Thank you. So I was in Devonport walking, just a beautiful day, and I'm by myself. I'm just taking a walk, grabbing a coffee, and these two young guys run up to me. This is years ago. They run up to me and they go, "Hey, bro, you're not gonna believe this, but you look like that dude from System of a Down. We want to take a picture with you and fool our mates into thinking it's him. Is that all right?" And I'm like, "Sure." So I pretended to be someone who's not me, looking like me, for them to fool their friends. They never knew that it was actually, I was like, wow, this is like fucking Matrix of my fucking universe right now. It was hilarious.
It's really good. It kind of sums up just the entire weird, unique life that you have led thus far and continue to lead, you know?
Yeah, man. Well,
Look,
you too.
just finally, when you're, when you wrote this book, obviously it's going to be consumed by people all around the planet. Did you ever imagine when you were starting out in music that one day you would be sitting down and just writing about the variety of experiences and creative endeavors and
Not
places
really.
and people and presidents that you've met? Did you ever imagine that would happen?
Not really, because my writings early on were always poetic and kind of very stream of consciousness. They were not very actual. They were not, prose. I started writing prose later in life because of political things, like I would have to get on and literally think things through and write them in factual terms, in minimalistic words, etc. And that made me more of a prose writer and this is the first time I'm actually thinking of the cause. Thank you. So I didn't know why I switched from poetry to prose, but it
Yeah.
was basically the activist.
Yeah. It all comes back to that, right?
Yeah, it does. Interestingly enough. Yeah.
Look, Serj, thank you so much for this. As I say, please read the book Down with the System. It's a great read. I think you've done this remarkable thing where fans will find so much in it. And someone that has never heard of you would embrace it. My mum would embrace this book. There's so much for everyone, which
Cool.
I love. And yeah, thanks, Fane, for this interview that you've put together. And thanks
Thank
all
you,
of you
David.
for watching. And
Thanks
yeah,
for doing this, bro. Yeah, thanks for doing this. This is a big honor for me, honestly.
oh,
Having a
look,
good
it goes
friend
both
who I
ways.
respect and appreciate. Yeah,
Thank you, my
thanks,
brother.
brother.
Take care.
Thank you. All right, I'll talk to you soon.